Pretty much all of these start on Adobe Mixamo, where you can get free characters and animations. I pretty much always choose the mannequin character, as we never actually see the character, but we just, want the mesh, and that's like the most basic, standard, I guess, stereotypical mesh you can get. And then for animations, I'll just search in dance, and yeah, let's just see what kind of pops out to me here. Some of the things to consider are, you want to find a balance between, super fast movement of arms and more like steady movement. Just because if you do have like an incredibly fast movement consistently, and that you want liquid kind of simulating off of that and taking some of that velocity, it might expand the size of your simulation a lot if particles are just flinging everywhere. That said, having those flinging motions is also really fun. So don't hold yourself back too much from it, but just it's something to consider. Oh, that's kind of neat. So yeah, some of the things I like about this are, it has a nice starting dynamic thing where, like, especially if we have liquid coming up to form it can kind of do a little jump out there like that. That would be a really cool reveal. This motion's alright, you'll get some liquid splashing over there, and then that's kind of a nice dynamic pose to end on. Oh, that's kind of fun. I think the other one logically has better places to stop at, but this one just, I don't know, the vibe of this is like, someone throwing it down. Yeah, you know what, let's go with this. And then as you're downloading it, you do definitely want it with skin, and frames per second is kind of important to choose at this point. I generally either do 24 or 30. The important part is just to stick with it for no matter what. I'm gonna do 30. Generally, simulations look a little better in 30. We'll just throw this in assets, and geometry. Yeah, so I already created this. It's just a blank folder set up. Now we can get going, opening up Blender. Just using Blender 3.4, I believe. This should work for anything. Immediately select, delete everything, file, import, FBX. Bam, import it. There you have it. One thing to consider, just very first thing, I always like to do double check. This cube is supposed to be the height of a normal person, which is just about the right scale here. So it's good to just keep that in mind, especially if you are going for something that you want to be smaller or to look more grand. But this is the vibe that I do actually want, and so it's already good there, but just double checking yourself. And then before we forget, we'll save it. Yeah, so yeah, let's take a look and just also kind of start thinking now about if there's any environment that you want. For this one, I definitely am imagining some type of camera move where we're like coming back with a character here as he's kind of jovially going forward, going to the side here. There's a party going on, so I can imagine some nice bright colors. Probably going to want to extend this just a little bit, not too much. Probably don't want a simulation more than 500 frames. Let's see, maybe right here. Well, you can just have it fall down as it ends here. We do want to keep in mind we'll be moving this whole animation forward a little bit to give it some time for the water particles to build up and join forces with our main mesh. At this point, normally I'd start doing some initial simulating and just seeing how it feels, and then later on pick music and, maybe add in some environment. I'm going to try to plan it out a little bit more just so it's easier to keep all the setup stuff in this one section of the video. So let's start thinking about if there are any environment pieces we want to add here. Like what? This is very clearly gives the vibe of a dance floor. This could either be like a disco-like dance floor and there's like people around and whatnot that are all like silhouetted, or I could see it being like an abandoned dance floor or like warehouse factory. I think there's something always fun about contrasting the vibes of this character with its environment. So one of the things that could help with ideating in this is just going right over to Quixel Bridge, which is the best source of just, free assets. If you have an Epic Games account, you likely already know about Quixel Bridge, and you can download it. It's free, and then it has a plugin where you can automatically export any models you find here to Blender. I'll link a tutorial down below if you want to have a more in-depth tutorial about this. Yeah, because we're going to be going for glowing particle look, so it's already a bit out of this world, but There's lots of stuff in here we can throw in there to just increase the production value. Yeah, we can just start downloading a couple of these. Plastic drum, electrical box. Oh, that's beautiful. Ooh, I like this workbench. It could be really fun to have the particles kind of like spilling onto that for part of it. We're not going to see too much of the background. I want it to be pretty dark so the particles add some nice contrast. Let's go over to our purchased. Select all of this stuff. Right now I'm just kind of creating this to create, but typically it'd be good to probably combine this into something that, you know, tells a purpose or has an environmental message or something else. X4K resolution, export. It's already set up, it'll export to Blender, so you should see it automatically populate right here in a second. There we go. Lots of stuff. And it's all pretty well sized up already to him, as you can see. Take the opportunity to move him into a simulation folder. Hide you. A, select everything. M, move into environment. Assets. We'll go do that. And then we can also just kind of separate all this stuff out of here. Let's just move all this back a little bit. Unhide our main guy here. A lot of floor plane in. Scale it up by 10. Give us a little something to work with. Let's just scale that down by 0.5. That's a little big. Yeah, let's just start placing stuff. We can start thinking a little bit about our camera movement here. I'm imagining for this one we'll have kind of a camera move where the camera kind of like snakes around and follows some particles that come up to form him. So we want a couple key objects here for the particles to snake around. We don't want to make it too big though. So I think let's just constrain ourselves. We'll have one table here for interaction, then we'll have just a couple things here in the foreground that we can kind of follow a bit as it goes around. Again, in theory, there should be a lot more logic to all of this. You know, I like the idea of having this chain in here somewhere. But we can move that around and tweak it a bit for the final render. But something like this works. Let's get a material for this base layer here. So we'll go into bridge, dusty concrete floor. Beautiful. Go into shading, dusty concrete. There we go. And now just while we're here, quickly rescale the texture. So take a texture coordinate, vector, math, UV into here. So to multiply by kind of alt right click drag into all of these here to do all together. There we go. Okay, so it's this. So yeah, as you'll notice, there's actually, with all these Quixel imports, there's a good bit of a reflection here. And that is because I realized that doesn't have the normal map mapped up right, and also has clear coat all the way up. So, and also has this going into specular instead of roughness. So this is an almost completely gray thing here. So there's a little bit of cleanup that we want to do on these materials for all the Quixel scans whenever you do import them. The first thing I'll deal with is the roughness here. So we're going to take this roughness, we're going to reroute it from specular into actual roughness, and then let's just see. Okay, there we go. Now we can actually get some definition here. I don't care too much about being realistic with these roughness values. Just something not 0, not 1 is good for right now. Like that feels okay. It's a little bit shiny. And then the important part is taking this clear coat that was up here, bringing it down to 0. And then the last thing is taking this normal and putting it in normal. And that, I believe, is it for what we want to do with these. So let's just take this color ramp, copy this, and go around to these and, you know, paste it in. Alright, see, that was just to kind of help me keep sane as we're doing this a little bit here. Now is a good time to pick the song, and that'll help us pace out the rest of the simulation. For songs, you can go wherever you want. I have an account at artlist.io. Is, you know, royalty-free music to use. I am kind of looking for something that has a bit of a lower start and then builds up to a release. That's going to allow us to kind of have some build up to the particles coming together to form the guy. And then the other thing to look for in music is having a nice ending beat that you can kind of cut into the very start there and have it end off. The other thing I realize we should be considering here is whether the dancing is going to line up to the music. For the old other one, Thriller, I just looked up what the Thriller BPM was and found a song that matched that dance. For this one, it's a little bit more complicated. I actually don't know what is the best way to... Does on Mixamo have anything? You know what? It's fine. We'll just pick a couple songs here that could work then, and then feel it out in Blender. We've got the songs downloaded. We can go into Blender, video editing, and for the very first frame, Shift A, add a sound. Let's just add all three of these into here right now. It's gonna make them really long, but it's just. But we want the beat drop to be here, so let's just display waveform. Move this beat drop up here. Also display waveform for these here. Now we are going to need to cut down on this intro. It's about right here that there's a cutting point. So yeah, we can just mute this with H, unmute with Alt H. Yeah, we definitely want to cap it before 500 just to get general, keep it reasonable. So let's cut this here. Let's bring this ending bit over here. Delete. Okay, I think we'll go a little longer. Just thinking about like how much dancing we'll get. See if there's a good place to line this up. Just generally with like where the beats are in the waveform. Get it to 500. And that kind of encaptures the whole thing, but let's see how it actually plays once we're here, and we can kind of, what I like to do is I'll drag this up, go to video sequencer, and kind of just let us actually see the waveform as we're lining this up. Is what we'll do is take all this dance movement, and we won't have it really come in until right here. So we'll just select the skeleton, A to select all the keyframes, move them over. So we're kind of like following some particles here. They're coming up, forming him. So it's right here that the beat really. So we want it to be a bam. Timing of it lines up a little better than I thought. I don't know if we will need to speed this up. The one concern now here, though, I already know that's going to be trouble getting into simulating, is having his arms out far like this for having as the starting position. I wonder, maybe we can have, oh wait, we could just have it start like this. Yeah, that's going to be fine because it's really, you're not going to be able to make up too much defining features once the liquid is kind of forming over him. So I think that should work. And so we just kind of wanted something that was a little bit skinnier with, because if his arms were out, then the liquid kind of bulge up around his arms and look a little funny, but having something a little more human shape will be good. Okay, listening to it now, I'm realizing that I kind of want that bam hit to happen with this foot kick. So how would it feel we just move that here. That's nice. And then there's kind of that ending little note here comes as his leg comes out, which could be a funny position to end on, because once we end the simulation, we're just gonna be left with this last pose that will fall down. So I think we'll probably extend it a little bit more than 500 frames. Depends. If we do want it to loop, like I did in the one yesterday, we'll need more frames. You know, honestly, the way that this is shaping up with the camera movement, it doesn't feel like it's going to be a very natural loop, because I do really like the idea of it following these trail of particles coming in here and then coming up. So maybe we'll not do a loop for this one. So at this point we could start putting in the camera, but I'm actually going to wait a little bit until we do some initial simulation work, just so we can know roughly the speed of the particles to trail and animate it to that.